who's lived within 3 centuries. First News at 6, it's next. Well, as the 20th century draws to a close, people begin looking back, remembering important events in time. Jancy Sheets shows us one local woman whose life is truly straight from the history books.
We've read the headlines, heard about the terror, and are about to witness the turn of a century. But very few can actually say they've lived to see every day of the 1900s.
No, I never thought she'd ever live to be 101. But she made it. I guess tenacity, I guess, is what it took.
Margaret Freeny was born November 28, 1898 in Stewart, Oklahoma. And although she may not remember much from those first few years, her eyes have seen 3 centuries of history.
Till the universe explodes as a
Growing up as an orphan in Caddo, Margaret married the late Homer Freeny, the former Bryan County treasurer.
Well, just liked everything about him. I can't think of anything that I didn't like.
Miss Freeny taught school for over 30 years and even managed to raise 4 children of her own.
I rode a horse to school up through the 8th grade most of the time, and it sure did get cold in the wintertime because we didn't have clothes like we do now.
But in 1925, things got easier for the Freenys with the purchase of their very first automobile.
If I try to compare a Model T to today's cars, there's no comparison. You know.
World War II brought along more hardship with the enlistment of her son Robert.
She knew I was in Pearl Harbor, but she didn't know if I was alive or not. We didn't know they were Japanese until they started dropping their bombs. And,
10 decades, 2 world wars, 18 presidents, and the assassination of 2 great leaders.
Have a bulletin coming in. The President of the United States is dead.
I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama.
She's lived through it all, and in 4 days, this 101-year-old woman will see yet another era in history. Jancy Sheets, First News, Durant.
Margaret now has 4 children, 8 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren, and 3 great-great-grandchildren. My, oh my. Well,
But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. There, see? Some blackberries.
Read it again, Mommy.
Give her a break, Dad. You heard it 3 times.
That's right.
Are we ready? This is a video of John Ellis Freeny and June Merrick Freeny's family. The films you're seeing now are at our wedding 44 years ago on August the 11th, 1956. We spent our first evening at the Holiday Inn out on I-35 east of Oklahoma City that evening, and went from there to Santa Fe and Taos, New Mexico. This is a picture of the Holiday Inn there in Oklahoma City. And my trout fishing effort out at Red River, New Mexico, a few days later, I knew about as much about trout fishing as a hog does Sunday. But anyway, it was a pretty place, and we enjoyed being there. This is some pictures of the Red River area. I cut out most of those scenes of nothing but trees and mountains. Bob Stewart was kind enough to loan us an air-conditioned station wagon on that August honeymoon trip, so we enjoyed the comfort of air conditioning, which was uncommon for most cars back at that time. That was a picture of my wife, June. This is June fishing herself up on, I guess, a lake there in the Red River area. These are some scenes made around the Taos area. This is El Sombrero Lodge in Red River. I think that's where we spent 2 or 3 days of our honeymoon. This is a scene on Red River's main street, which back at that time was not much going on there. Cowboys and trail riders going down Main Street horseback. This is June out in front of the lodge, and myself there posing for pictures. These scenes are made over at Taos, New Mexico back at that time. It was a little more primitive then than it is today. I don't know what kind of arrangements I'm trying to make with that Taos Indian. This is June in front of some of their outdoor ovens where they cook their bread. This is an interesting scene of these kids. Watch them, they're just like birds on a high line. One, they won't move until I suppose I'm giving them gum or money or something for their companion company. This is a scene where a flood came and almost washed the bridge out there on one of the Indian reservations that we were visiting. And this is our first home in Wilburton, Oklahoma that we moved to. I became the county agent there in September of 1956. And this was our first home that we rented there. It's on Main Street east of downtown Wilburton. This is some of the mountain scenery south of Wilburton, looking from the top of Blue Mountain south. This is the nursery wing of the Ada Hospital, and it's a place where all three of my sons were born. Benjamin Clay in December of 58, Stuart in August of 60, and John in January of 1963. And this is one of them coming home with their mother shortly after he was born there in that hospital. It's the same old car all three of them went home in, but it'll take me a few minutes to determine which one this is. That's Grandmother Merrick carrying the baby in June. Going into Merrick's home there in Ada. June, they had to go to the hospital in Ada because we didn't have one in Wilburton at that time, and we wanted to be close by. This is Ben. He was born in December the 19th, 1958. And I suppose that's Christmas of that year. It's John Merrick, June's father. That's some of the jewelry I gave her for Christmas, and that's me with checking our Christmas presents for. I suppose Ben's getting his first bath. June and Ben together. Now there's a proud father for you. Named his son Benjamin Clay after my brother Benjamin Clay, who died in World War II at Salerno, Italy, September the 11th, 1943. This is old Tip, a setter bird dog owned by John Merritt. He was a pretty good dog. I got the idea I wanted a blue tick hound dog at about the time Ben was born, and that was the blue tick there. She's a registered blue tick hound. Their name was Ben's Blue Sue. She got distemper and died not many months after that. That's John Merrick, Ben's grandfather. He was quite an outdoorsman. He loved fish, quail hunt. It's a picture of mine and June's wedding. The camera was new to us at that time, so it's one of the reasons for pictures of everything. This is my father, John Wesley Buck Freeny. He was had a stroke in 1956 and lived until April of 1966. He was about 60 years of age at that time. That's a cowboy shirt he got for Ben on his first birthday, and these are some kids that lived there in the neighborhood in Caddo, where my dad was living. This is Mrs. Truxell. She helped take care of him during the years that he was crippled up. This is a picture of Maggie Freeny, I guess along about that time. She is confined to the bed for some reason. These are some of the Hood boys from over at Welberton, and their mother, Shirley Hood, there on the right, were friends of ours. And Gwen Hood, he was a fishing buddy and a rancher south of Wilburton there on Gaines Creek. And this is Ben getting his dinner. It's June. She is a beautiful woman, a gracious lady. It's Buck again. Getting his picture made with his first grandson. We used 8mm camera and two big flash bulbs on the side of it. It's a wonder our kids are not all blind from all of the filming we did with them and shining those bright lights in their faces. That's me and Ben. This is Jess Barbary. He was the county agent over at Holdenville, and I was his assistant for 2 or 3 years. This is my mother, Sophia Maytubby Pitchlin Freeny, holding Ben while we were living in Wilburton. Her first grandson. There's a proud mother and proud grandmother. Ben's laying on a Navajo blanket that I'd had for many years, and I used it for a saddle blanket till I realized how valuable it was, and I took it, put it away, and quit using it under saddles. That's Ben's. I don't know whether that's his first birthday or not. I don't know who those fellas are. Oh, that picture's made down at Allie Hart's ranch house south of Wilburton. She had this pet deer and took the scissors and put her brand on the sides of the deer and his hips and a red ribbon and bells on him. That was her ranch brand, the Hart. And she did that to protect her pet deer from deer hunters, but someone did shoot the deer, and this is her home. She was a very gracious, dignified little woman that lived in those mountains all of her life, and I suppose would have shot somebody if she'd caught 'em killing her deer. This is Steve Willis and Nita Willis, and they lived in New Orleans back at that time. June and my mother went down there and left Ben with my sister Sue and Bronk Willis, brother-in-law. June and I went on to Biloxi, Mississippi for a few days vacation and had a great time. Back to Mrs. Hart, when she was almost 70 years old, she hemmed a coyote up in a shed down there on her ranch and beat him to death with a branding iron. That's Steve and Ben and Nita performing. This is June and Ben and Steve Willis, my sister Sue. This is some scenes around the Mississippi River there at New Orleans, and that's my brother-in-law, John Gibson Willis, married to my sister. He and I always had a great relationship for the many years they were married. That's my mother in New Orleans, near Tulane Stadium. This is one of the famous restaurants in New Orleans where we had lunch one day, and other scenes of the French Quarters. That was June and Nita, and Sister Sue holding Ben, Annie's dad, that's Ben in front of her house in Wilburton. That's Mrs. Benuzzi. She lived next door to us there. That's Carrie Lane, my brother Bennett's daughter. They were visiting us there in Wilburton. No, that's in Medill. I moved over there and became the county agent there in about 1960. That's Bennett holding Ben. He's my older brother. And that's my Uncle Tude Freeny. They're there visiting. That's my dad creeping around there on the porch. I guess this is some scenery south of Wilburton again. It's Ben as he's gotten a little older. In June at Robbers Cave State Park north of Wilburton. I suppose we were there for a visit. This is herd of deer up in Robbers Cave State Park. There are many more deer today in Oklahoma than there was back at that time. This is me and Ben and Becky Nash riding that old mare. Becky's the daughter of Jack and Lottie Nash. They're at Wilburton, good friends of ours, and I used to hunt, track down and catch wild horses in those mountains up there north of Wilburton and east of Wilburton, and Jack and I would go up there and have a pretty wild time of doing that. That's Ben and Eddie and Becky Nash riding the old mare. that cigarette reminds me that I learned shortly thereafter that that was a bad habit, and I quit. And Ben's playing patty cake. We bought Similac by the case back at that time, and I think that's how he got so fat, was on that Similac diet. That's Buck Freeny again with Ben and June. Ben didn't like that hat, and I shouldn't have kept putting it on him, but they wanted his picture with the hat on, and he thought it wasn't a very good idea. That's one of my dad's friends there. There's some more scenes of Ben. He always liked to get on the sink and play with the pots and pans, so that's what he's doing there. Experience has proven that you'll make more pictures of the first one than you do of the third one. That's Ben and me. That's I believe that's when he was first learning to walk. It's a picture of Mrs. Benuzzi next door to us in Welverton. That's an old photograph of me when I was a little boy. This is June and Ben. I suppose that's Christmas, 1959. It's his first haircut. His first birthday. His birthday guests are the Hood Boys and Eddie Nash and Becky, Bob Long, his cousin. It's fireplace at Grandma's on, I guess, 1959. The other kids there's Johnny and Bob Long, Susan Long, Helen there on the right, their mother. John Merrick at the couch. Looked like I've been off bird hunting or getting ready to go. It's Helen Long next to her dad, John Merrick, Mrs. Merrick. There's Gene Long, Helen's husband. John Merrick's carving up the Christmas turkey. That's Jean. Mrs. Merrick there on the right. It's Ben and his dad in a hunting cap. That cigar reminds me that I tried it all. Chewing, dipping, smoking, cigarettes. That's a cigar. I didn't smoke many of them, but occasionally. Those chaps he's wearing are some deerskin chaps that we made. That's a painting of Ben that was made from a photograph by an artist down in New Orleans. It's Libby, little girl over at Welberton that came over and played with Ben often. I don't recall her last name. There was a cardboard box they played in. That's a picture of Uncle Dick Castleberry. He gave me my first job of shooting the birds out of his milo field with my bean flip or slingshot. He was famous out at Seminole, Texas. He whipped the county bully, and they elected him county sheriff out there in the early days. And he later came to Caddo as a horseman. That's James Clay, Tude Freeny's son, and Ben at their ranch east of Caddo. That's Utah Nation. He worked for Tude. Well, the herd bulls are on the ranch. That's a ranch house that was built in 1959, I believe, about the time Ben was a year old. This is him that's Tude, my dad's younger brother, in June. This is him and his wife, Madge. It's Tude. He was quite a cowman and a cowboy. He and I cowboyed a lot together during the big war. That's my dad on the right, and Tude on the left in his front yard there east of Caddo. When all the older boys were off in the war, why, he and I had to do a lot of work, the two of us. This is Ben. He looks nice in his lunch. This is my mother, Sophia Freeny, and Ben at our home in Wilburton at Easter time, about 1959. And June. And Ben and his dad. You see that little fenced-in area there in the front yard? We made that so Ben could play out under the shade of the tree and not get out on the streets. We moved to Medill in, I believe, the fall of 1960, and lived on a ranch out west of town. And this is Ben at that place, and another blue tick hound dog. That's old bird dog. I've forgotten his name. Anyway, the Moncrief kids are playing with Ben. They lived somewhere there close by and worked on the ranch for the Butler. That's the ranch house we lived in. We couldn't find any other place to live when we moved there. It's Ben in his cowboy hat. He's taking a horseback ride with his dad. It's June and Ben. Ben's getting excited about that big sucker. He can't wait till he gets his hands. This was Thanksgiving about 1961 at our home in Medill. And that's Joni and Sherry McMasters and Cindy and Tom McMasters there on the right, and Joanne briefly showed up there. That's Tom there on the right, and Joni and Cindy. It's Ben with his grandfather, Buck Freeny, and that's a photograph of Buck's father. His name was Robert Clay Freeny, born in 1850. He was a probate judge of the Choctaw Nation, county and probate judge in Blue County of the Choctaw Nation. That's more of the Troxels and Ben. That's Tom and Joanne McMasters, and their daughters are there for Christmas. Grandma Holden, Jana Beth, Long's daughter. It's Helen Long. Joanne and John Merrick there, and Tom McMasters. There was Ben's Raggedy Ann somebody was holding there. He had that for many, many years. That's Tom McMasters and his girls and Ben out playing football at John Merrick's. That looks like Bob Long. It's Miss Merrick. It's Ben buried up the sand pile. It's one of the Moncrief kids. That's a blue tick hound pup we had. This is obviously an Easter egg hunt at about 1960. That's Joanne with her girls and the Long boys. That's Helen and I think Janabeth. And Johnny, and this is an old house that was in Wilburton at the time we lived there, and I was always fascinated with its size and age, and quite a huge old place. We're experimenting with making photos of video of some photos. That was my grandmother, Josephine Baxter Freeny, and it's my dad on the left and Homer on the right there, horseback. This is after we moved into town in Medill in about 1961, I believe. That was a couple of bird dogs we had. Been playing any sandbed. These pictures were made on Mountain Fork River over in McCurtain County, north of Broken Bow. That's Ben with Tude Freeny. He's going to get aboard that mare. This is an interesting scene. We're at Ada at the park and they have a little train. Ben's excited about the train, and watch him, he's trying to shake hands with that conductor of the train so he can make friends with him and ride. See there, he's trying to shake hands. He finally got his attention, and he's satisfied now that he's going to get to ride that train. Before Stuart was born, and during the time he was in the Ben born, I took Ben down and watched a switch engine in Ada sitting out there close to the track, and he stopped it. The conductor stopped that switch engine. He called out to us, said, "You boys get on." And we got on that switch engine and rode for half a day up and down the tracks there, moving cars around, and it was pretty thoughtful of him to invite us to go with him. But you think about that today, they wouldn't even consider letting a stranger get near one of those engines, much less get on and ride up and down the tracks. I'm glad to see Stuart come along. This is his first bath there in Ada at Grandma's house, and that's my mother taking care of him. And maybe he'll get a little attention now instead of Ben getting all of it. That's Stuart getting his first bath. That's Grandmother Merrick there helping to bathe him. And my mother Sophia. That's Stuart. This is June giving Stuart his dinner, and Mama Sophia holding Stuart. They all had lots of black hair, black as a crow. That's Ben, Stuart and his mother. That's Stuart with his grandpa, John Merrick. Ben got in the lipstick. That's another old photograph of my dad on the left, Buck Freeny, and Homer, his little brother, on the right. That's Stuart with his other grandpa, Buck Freeny. Back to Uncle Dick Castleberry. He came to Caddo with 200 mares back in the early days and set up a horse ranch and went broke there. And he later became the night marshal of the town of Caddo and did other work around town to survive. That's Ben fixing up his clothesline. That bassinet was used by all three of our boys, and now it's being used by John's children. So it's been a very serviceable bassinet. That's Ben after we moved to town in Wilburton. He's out in the rain, enjoying the rain and pulling flowers. He'll probably get a drink out of the bed of that tricycle bed. I guess it's all right. Ben has to be fed like Stuart does. He wants to be a baby again. That's Stuart and Ben. Ben's still trying to play like a baby. That's Stuart. It's Helen Long with Janabeth, Mrs. Ben. I think that's Stuart. That's Stewart and John Merrick. This must be about Christmas 1960. That's Carrie Lane, Bennett's daughter. And Stewart, and Ben on the tricycle. We were living in a rented house in Medill at the time. That's Stewart. This is my brother Bennett. Ben used to enjoy every day when I left, he'd come out and jump a few times off the porch. This is Stewart. That's Mrs. Spicer. She lived next door to us in Medill. She and her husband both were maybe full-blood Choctaws, I don't know. We started building a house down on an acreage on the south edge of Medill in 1962. And we completed that, moved in, lived there about 2 or 3 months before I accepted a job with the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association beginning January 1 of 1963. And that's Stuart and I at our building site there in Medill. Governor Raymond Gary's daughter and son-in-law, Mona Mae Waymeyer, bought our home after we left Medill for Oklahoma City. This is Stuart and Ben in their little play pool. This is Steve Willis down at Mill Creek at the old swimming hole. Had a tree swing there, and it was a great place for kids and older kids. That's Ben. That creek was one on Mill Creek, south of Mill Creek, and a place where I've fished for 45 years, and always had great fly fishing there. This has got to be Stuart's first birthday. This is Merrick. I don't know who that kid is. That's Tom McMaster's there and his daughters, Joanne. This is our fireplace in Oklahoma City in the home that we built when we moved there in January of 1963 and lived there until about 1988. It's Ben, Stuart on the Rocky Horse. He always liked Rocky horses and real horses. June is pregnant with John at that time. Well, we had still living in Medill at that time. That's Stuart. This has got to be John with my dad, Buck Freeny. And that would have been in about 1963. These my older brothers, Bennett and Benjamin, served the country well. And that's a picture of my dad and Ben, and a painting of Ben. That's my dad, 3 generations, Ben, me, and my dad. That's Stuart on that horse again. We lived in a rent house on 38th Street there off of Pennsylvania for 6 months of '63 while we were building our home. And this is in the backyard of that house there on 38th Street. Ben will take what he wants since he's a little bigger. The mother always dressed them very well. That's Easter of '63. She was a great mother and took good care of those kids. You always need to marry a woman that's got sense enough to raise your children. This is a little out of chronological order, but this is Ben at the nursery hospital in Ada, kicking on the door, waiting for John to come out. Same old hospital, same old car. Here they come. That's the third time we've gone through this. And John was born this January of 30th, 1963. There's Ben and little baby John on the way home. Same old house. That must be, is that Sophia, my mother? There's old Tip. That bird dog of mine was named Freckles. Yep, that's Sophie. Carrying John in. There's June and Ben. Stuart didn't want to talk about that new little brother. He wanted to come to his dad. There's Mama with Stuart and Ben and John and June. John's getting his dinner. Ben's upset about something. There's John. There's Stuart and John, that with their dad. That old rocky horse caught it. John and his mother June. It's a grandmother Sophia. That's John with his dad and his grandfather Buck. It's Ben and Stuart. It's Stuart and Ben. Stuart's happy about something. That's Stuart and Ben in their sand bed. Old Uncle Dick Castleberry wasn't an uncle. We just kids called some of those older people uncle or aunt to instead of calling them Mr. or Mrs. or by their first name. That's Stuart and his grandmother Sophia. That's Buck. Ben. That's Buck and Stuart. That's Stuart on the horse again. Watching me go to sleep sitting on that rocky horse in a minute. There he goes, sound asleep. This must be up at Crested Butte or Vale or Aspen. There's Ben. I went to Denver a couple of times every year, and as the kids got a little bigger, we'd take them with us and always go through the mountains. That's the lodge there on the right. That's Crested Butte, I believe, and that lodge is built by Bob Stewart, and only had about 20 rooms in it. Wasn't big enough to do much with, but if you notice, there's hardly any. As Stewart, he wanted that cigar, and I let him have it, which was a mistake, but everybody makes mistakes. Watch him. He handled it properly. This is John. believe this is on Pikes Peak. In about 1964, 65. This is a lake up near Crested Butte. It's Ben and his dad fishing in the lake. I wore that old cap about 25 years with my fly fishing lures and equipment on it. My philosophy was if I couldn't get it on my cap, I didn't take it fishing with me. It's been in June. That's Crested Butte. It's June in Bend. It's Stuart there. And John over there at Christmas, 1964 probably. It's Tommy Borg right there. Ben. I believe that's Becky Borg. And John. That'd be Christmas 1963. Somebody's having a birthday party. Must be Ben. Tommy Borg on the right. Kevin. I don't remember his last name. It's Ben's birthday. It's John and June. It's John. This is another Christmas at John Merrick's. It's Ben, Stuart, and John in the wagon. I don't know what became of the wagon. It's Ben and John and Stuart there on the right. It's Ben's Raggedy Ann, and he and Tommy Borg are putting on a performance. If you notice, they used to put on the shows out in the garage, invite the neighborhood kids to come in to see it. Too bad we didn't get that lecture on tape. Oh, it's John's first birthday.